I'll start on Taboo then.
Sure.
Taboo is a very interesting film. It's all black and white. Do you know what country it's from?
I wanted to say
I want to say it's like Portugal or something.
I thought that's what it was.
Is that what it is?
I haven't seen it, but that sounds right.
Yeah, I think they're talking about being in Lisbon, so I'm pretty sure it's Portuguese.
I think that's right. And it's shot like Academy standard too, which is very interesting. It's shot at
1661, which is odd for a movie shot in 2012. And it's hard to describe because there's like a cut in the movie. It's almost like two movies. I didn't think the first movie was that good.
I would agree.
I thought the second movie was really good. Mm-hmm. I thought the second movie was great. Yeah. And basically the way it's structured is you sort of learn about this woman and she has this kind of crazy neighbor across the hall and, you know, she's trying to help her out and be a good neighbor. And you sort of see her personal struggle with, you know, the life that she's living and, you know, the guy that she's seeing that, you know, and she's older. She's in her 50s probably. So, you know, she's single and, you know, there's like this weird subplot with like a girl that comes to visit her but like doesn't want to visit her but something.
Yeah, I can't think of the term, but basically she provides sort of a home for traveling students
or something.
Like somebody maybe out of high school or out of college that's just trying to like travel and see the world. She sort of puts them up in a temporary place. Yeah, I thought that was kind of a strange thing too.
But anyways, and then the second half of the story, you start to learn more about this crazy lady that lives across the hall. You hear her story, and that is a great story.
Yeah.
That is a really excellent story. Now, I'm totally okay with the structure of the story. I don't understand why you needed to cut it in half.
Well,
like,
essentially,
I would have given you like a third and then the other 2/3.
Well, essentially, it's reverse storytelling is the way I sort of saw it. Or not even that, actually, because it kind of – well, I guess that is still the case. Like, because obviously it's showing you sort of present time, and then you hear just a little bit of the woman's perspective, and then it sort of immediately jumps like 50 years.
Yeah.
40, 50 years.
Yeah, there's like a little opening – thing.
It's hard to describe the movie. Basically, it introduces a character about halfway through in a very interesting way because basically what it is that this woman's in poor health, so they go and find this man who she's requested to see before she dies. I mean, it's obvious. And then he becomes the narrator of the movie from that part on, and it almost becomes almost a silent movie.
Exactly.
But with narration.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. Because the way they use the sound in the movie is that people are talking and you don't hear their dialogue, but you hear everything else.
Exactly. You hear the wind blowing, you hear the rain falling, you hear gunshots and all that stuff.
And we learn that the woman once lived in Africa.
Yeah.
She grew up there. She started a family there, and this gentleman is involved in her life, and you sort of learn his story from his narration.
I thought that was like a beautiful, well-told, like fascinating story with a lot of really great cinematic elements. I read an article earlier this week that was like you talked about how the best use of a Stevie Wonder song. They were talking about the best use of a song in a film.
Sure.
And it's Be My Baby.
Yeah.
And I won't really talk about why it is, but, you know, that old song from the 50s or whatever, and how it's like there's like a different, like a French language or Spanish language or something, other version of the song that sort of weaves into the story, and it's just really, really well done. It's just that first half. Now, what I think they did that was interesting was – by the time I got to the end of the second half, the movie was over, and I was like, I really liked that. Yeah. And then as I thought more about it, I was like...
It sneaks up on you.
But that first half was really kind of superfluous in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I mean...
It's really hard to connect with the movie at the beginning, I thought. And you know, I always give sort of foreign movies that credit that like maybe I'm missing something.
Sure.
Something's
There's
getting
some
lost in
cultural
translation.
thing that I'm not getting,
but I feel like I've seen enough foreign films that it definitely felt something wasn't quite right because it almost seems like they tell this really satisfying story in the past, but then it never jumps back to the present.
Exactly.
But I like that.
I did too.
That's what I hated about and I'm going to put myself out here. That's what I hated about The Notebook. Because I really liked the old part of The Notebook, like when they're telling sort of that flashback part. But I hated the fact that we went back to the old people and watched them die. Sorry, spoilers.
It's been out for about 15 years. I think it's okay.
It was, you know what I mean? This movie does not do that. It ends in its, it makes a connection back to the present, from where it started. Like, you know, from the point A to point B, and then obviously it jumps back, and then it never goes back to A and B.
Exactly.
Which I really actually respected, because it found a way to do that without actually showing you sort of like these people's reaction to this old man telling sort of his version of the story.
And that's what made it made the first half even more superfluous to me. That we never even care about these people he's telling the story to after he starts telling the story.
Okay.
So I'm totally okay with the framing device. I really just think half an hour of that.
Yeah,
I would have had plenty of information.
Yeah, I would agree.
About
they could have tightened that up
to understand why this woman is in this place that she's in, and understand this sort of this woman a little bit better. But I think overall, I liked the movie overall. I think it's worth watching.
Yeah, the other thing I thought was really interesting is that they could have easily sort of filmed this movie in color, like widescreen, and really used the location, which would be Africa, in a very luscious, romantic kind of way. Yeah. That's not this movie. So it makes the viewer actually work harder to actually connect to the movie. And then I think by doing that, it really pays off at the end. Yeah. Because you feel like you've really invested in really kind of trying to concentrate on this movie. And Craig Simpson actually had something that he pointed out, that it does really sneak up on you. It just sort of like, you're just like, what's going on? Oh. Yeah. And then like you said, you're like, oh, this is really satisfying. So yeah, I would agree that the early part of the movie was really difficult. I'm glad I'm not the only one, because I was just kind of like, okay, maybe I'm not kind of catching on to what's going on here. Yeah. But I thought you had a very good use of narration, despite it being a foreign film. You know,
yes,
it would be neat. I'd be reading something anyways.
Exactly. Well, and that's something I find difficult with foreign films when there's a narrator. I lost about a third of what the narrator said because I would just get lost in the imagery and I would forget to read the subtitles. Maybe that's something about the cinematography, which was excellent. Yeah. But I just had a problem when somebody's not talking to another person. It's just it's just this sort of language in and of itself. I have a problem keeping up with that. And
a little bit of the movie too, and I just thought of this because I wrote that I thought it had some very clever scenes, but now that I think about it, it felt very Wes Anderson-y.
Yeah.
In a way. Some of the stuff, just people moving in shots and sort of interacting with each other. Nothing quite over the top like Wes Anderson would do, but I feel like if Wes Anderson were to make this movie, it would be very similar. Sort of some of the things that happen, because like a lot of like these really big dramatic things that happen are just kind of like brushed aside. Yeah. Like, oh, they're over here in the background. Like there's like a guy over here, like he's just dead. Yeah. And like that would be like horrifying. Yeah. But like the movie's just kind of like, oh yeah, that guy died. And this is the other part of the movie that we're going to tell you. Yeah. Like I feel like that's very Wes Anderson.
Very much. Yeah.
So
I think so.
So yeah, like I said, it doesn't feel like a new movie either, which I appreciated.
Yeah, and I think that's what really works for it, is that you get this sense that this is an old movie. This is a guy telling a story about the past, so he's seeing it in the past. That doesn't really make me understand why the first half of the movie was all in black and white. But
well, and I think it really helped too that the African sort of aspect of the movie was almost timeless. Yeah, I thought, so it was just like the use of clothing, the use of music, kind of really had to ground the movie into a certain timepiece, which I thought was really interesting too. So, because you could easily just like show this shot of the movie and be like, oh yeah, that was yesterday. Yeah, in real time, you'd be like, okay, yeah, because life over there obviously isn't as based on. I don't know. I don't know of an eloquent way of saying it.
There's not a lot of 9 to 5 going on in Africa.
At least in this part,
that countryside.
At least this part. So yeah, it was very interesting, sort of the cultural aspect of the movie that they sort of infused into it as well. So yeah, I liked it, but again, I would agree with you that the beginning is a little rough.
So stick with it. If you're watching it and you're like, how much longer is this going to go on? Give it some time. Give it some time.
Yeah, as soon as they go back to
you will be
as soon as they
rewarded.
go to Africa, it's that
Yeah.
game on. Like
Yeah.
the movie really takes off.
Yeah.
So, although it does kind of start in Africa.
Yeah,
Don't
sort of.
don't get fooled by that. They didn't like fast forward it for you. There's a little bit of a
Yeah.
sort of prologue.
Yes.
So
Yes. A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.